Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Upon Further Review. We've definitely been on a nice New Year's and holiday break, if you will. This will be our first pod of the year. We definitely gave ourselves a bit of a mental and emotional break after the election and the events afterward. We had so much to talk about. So many things has happened. Obviously, Biden won. We had the storming of the Capitol. We had the Democrats winning the runoff and seizing control of the Senate via 50-50 split. And today we are here to talk about the state of the GOP in a post-Trump presidency. The GOP finds themselves torn to some degree, but yet still united in their embrace of extremism, conspiracy, and the looming presence of Donald Trump over their party as a whole. Right now, there's an impeachment of Donald Trump the first time a president has ever been impeached a second time. Currently on the doorstep of the Senate. As they prepare to defend him, they also have to deal with the fact that over 100 members of the House of Representatives voted to overturn the results of our Democratic election. They even had senators who voted to overturn the results of a Democratic election. And all of this happened after a attack on the Capitol, a riot at the Capitol in which the center of democracy for the world was marched upon at the urging of the president at the time sitting in the United States, Donald Trump. And they smashed the windows, they broke down the doors, and they invaded the Capitol, they invaded the Senate chambers, they invaded the House chambers, and in the process, I believe 5 people died, including a United States Capitol police officer. So much has happened. We see the party laid bare, where they are forced to either turn towards reason and sanity in a Democratic election that they lost, or they continue to embrace conspiracy. Even now, we have 2 congresswomen, one of which, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a newly elected member of the House of Representatives, has embraced the QAnon theories and conspiracies, has embraced extremism, spoke for threatening other members of Congress. Her language has been exposed where she has embraced Pizzagate. She's embraced the fact that 9/11 was a falsehood. She has embraced that school shootings are a falsehood. And she has been called to question by Democrats in the party. And they offered a chance for Republicans to remove her from committees and leadership herself, and they rejected that. And now that vote goes to the entire House of Representatives, which is democratically controlled, and which is expected she will be stripped of her committeeships. At the same time, Republican Liz Cheney, member of the House of Representatives, is under fire, not for any conspiracy theory or any egregious behavior, but for supporting the impeachment of Donald Trump in the wake of the Capitol riot. Mike, the GOP has a crisis on their hands, and they have to decide who they are. On one hand, you have Mitch McConnell, who will stand there and say the president is responsible for his actions and will rebuke Marjorie Taylor Greene. At the same time, in the House, the members of the Republican Party refuse to actually levy any punishment on the behavior both of the former president, the behavior of its newest member of the House of Representatives, and has refused to outright rebuke these conspiracy theories that threaten our very fabric of our nation, while at the same time attacking anyone who does not offer blind faith and support for the president of the United States, or the former president of the United States. The question, Mike, is where do they go from here?
So the Republican Party has an existential crisis on its hands. On one hand, they have radical, totally out of touch conspiracy theorists rampantly growing and accumulating numbers of other followers that seem to just embrace the most craziest and looniest ideas imaginable, who follow a person named Q, who nobody has ever seen or heard from in real life. It's just an online persona. And they believe without a doubt that this Q is right, and that this Q is going to expose all the government corruption and all the Democrats' child sex trafficking ring and child sacrifices and sacrificing things to the devil and Moloch and all these things from a online anonymous profile. They say this Q is, ranked high in the government and has all types of clearances. And you got to think, for so many people to believe an obvious lie like that, it frightens me. But what frightens me more is they're growing in number. What frightens me more is that the establishment of the Republican Party on whole is afraid to challenge them because they are afraid for them to leave. And that puts them in a tough position. It's the point where do you fight for what's right, that you know what's right, or do you further embrace the craziness and pander to this growing infection that's reeking through the party in order to save face and maybe last another election cycle? It's obvious what the clear right thing to do is, but let's be honest, no politician has ever been self-serving. They need to expel Trump and his followers from the party. And I'll tell you why I take this harsh stance of expelling them from the party. Because once they purge themselves with Trump, his followers will go with him initially. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, they're going to come back to being conservative. But you have to rip the Band-Aid off. Instead, they're letting this infection sit there and grow slowly. They need to rip the Band-Aid off. They need to purge all of Trump and QAnon and all these alt-right, far-right Proud Boys, all of them. They need to take a hard stance and purge them from the party. Once they lose the backing and the coverage of the Republican Party, they're not going to be as bold. Their numbers are not going to continue to grow, and they will fade away for the most part into the pages of history. But as long as they let them and give them that shelter to grow because they're afraid to take that hardline stance, they'll never purge themselves from this craziness. And the longer they let this infection continue to grow and fester, what you're going to see is they already, there was a lot of people that were officials in the Republican Party from the Bush era have already just announced that they're leaving in droves because they said they don't even recognize this party anymore. So they're going to lose on one end or the other. They let this infection grow. It's going to convert and radicalize more people. And on the other side, they're going to start losing their actual true conservatives because they refuse to be associated with a party that thinks that the California wildfires were started by Jewish space lasers. I mean, this stuff, you literally couldn't make this up. I mean, you literally can't make this up. Jewish space lasers started the California wildfire. That's what Marjorie Taylor Greene said. Wow. Let that sink in. She's sitting member of the United States Congress. And she was voted into office. Shows you how out of touch some of the people in the Republican Party are. And they rather live in this fantasy land that was helped perpetuated by Donald Trump, where it became okay and acceptable to tell whatever lie and make whatever reality you would like. It's okay to do that when it was under his presidency. You could hit him with facts and he would say fake news. So he established the baseline, the ground rules for planking up the rules as you go. You don't need evidence. You just need a feeling. Whether that feeling is right or wrong, that's all you need to validate what your viewpoints are and validate some of the, it's just some of the evilest things you would hear people say and do. It's very saddening, just from a macroscopic picture to see that, roughly half, are going down this path. This is not to say that Democrats are perfect and they don't have their own issues, but it's nothing compared to this. We see Democrats, people identify as Democrats, I should say, storming the Capitol. We didn't see them beating police officers while wearing a Back to Blue hat and logo on their T-shirt. We didn't see them try to hunt down members of Congress and come in with zip ties and go in there and try to scan and steal U.S. government property and U.S. government intelligence and try to sell it to the Russians. Uh, that was conservatives. That's what conservatives, that's their skid mark on the pages of history that they're going to have to atone for. But right now, all you want to see them is, if you look on TV, if you look at any of these Congress people in Congress talking, conservative Congress people talking about this, all they want to say is, like, leave the past behind. Why are we doing impeachment? We need to let the country heal. They never take accountability for it. And that's a problem. It's accountability. They never take accountability for it. They never admit they were wrong. And even after the aftermath, where the tear gas haven't even cleared the grounds of Congress, when they come in to try to go ahead and certify the election, you still have people voting and challenging and voting no, saying that the election was rigged, and they're going, it'd be going against their conscience, to side with the right side of history, essentially. So I it's frustrating, but it's really a monster that they created themselves. And now I don't think they know how to put the lion back in the cage.
And that lion, and the reality is that lion and that leader of all of this is Donald Trump. Donald Trump has truly hijacked and commanded and dominated the Republican Party, and I believe he has a death grip on it. Two things. One, I think if you see what happened to Liz Cheney, somebody who, for all other intents and purposes, views aside, has not done anything galling or egregious, to warrant a vote on her confidence of whether or not she should be running committees. She voted against the president, as others did, but they singled her out. And the second part is, there was a video of Mitt Romney flying to D.C. a plane full of some of the very people who stormed the Capitol. And they are harassing him to no end on this plane. They're calling him traitor and things of that nature. I truly believe that the Republican Party is torn between roughly half who, if they were to reject the president and reject these conspiracies and turn towards normalcy, a party of Bush, a party of Reagan, if they were turned back into that direction, they wouldn't even find a place at home. They wouldn't be safe at night. They would probably fear for their lives. The second half is Donald Trump has floated the idea of starting a new political party. And according to a poll by The Hill, 64% of GOP voters said they would join a Trump-led party, including 32% who said they would very likely join. And by contrast, 36% of Republican respondents said they are either very or somewhat unlikely. So that's a punishing percentage of their party. Donald Trump wields the ability to threaten the very existence of the GOP as we know it. And that's what many of them fear. Mike Pence, of course, did not support overturning the election. And as a result, MSNBC's Joe Scarborough said that the former vice president remains in quote unquote in fear of his life because of Donald J. Trump. He faulted the former president for inciting the deadly riots. And we're talking about a debate over whether or not him doing his job and representing the will of the people means he is a traitor to his party, and that he is a traitor that has to remain on the run to some degree. He's been staying with family and moving back and forth between all sorts of things. And he hasn't even been able to stand in one place. And this is a guy who still has Secret Service protection. We haven't had word from him as to whether or not that's the case, but these are the reports that have come out. I don't think anybody can stand on a GOP platform and reject the extremism. And that's the poison that they've allowed to infect themselves. They fed it and used it to seize the presidency in 2016. And now it's going to become possibly the very thing that will rip them in half and kill them. They are out here embracing the wildest and most egregious conspiracies. You went over them yourself. And they're with possibly the most dangerous one being that democracies did in America, that their votes don't matter. In fact, we have now come to find that many of the people arrested in the Stop the Steal, mind you, it was called Stop the Steal of the election. Many of the people arrested in that did not even vote themselves. It's possible that Donald Trump's own words encouraged people not to vote for him, despite the fact that his vote total increased. This is the disconnect from reality that we see with the Republican Party. And unfortunately, in the United States of America, we are a two-party system. There appears to be no end of that two-party dominance anytime soon. We have the Democrats and we have Republicans, and though one of those two are going to hold power in every state legislature in all 50 states, obviously at the national level in our Congress, House of Representatives, and Senate, and one of those two will be the president. And that is the lines that all politics are divided by. So when you're faced with this level of extremists out of one of them, it's a threat to the future of the country. It is, until it is quelled and crushed. And right now, they do not know how to overcome that. And that's a very dangerous thing. So we have the Senate Republican leader, Mitch McConnell. He issued a tacit rebuke of the controversial Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. He slammed the Georgia Republicans' loony lies and conspiracy theories as a cancer for the party, according to CNN. I think Mitch is kind of late. Somebody who suggests that perhaps no airplane hit the Pentagon on 9/11, the idea that school shootings were pre-staged, or the Clintons crashed JFK Jr.'s airplane. You're not living in reality, and this has nothing to do with the challenges facing American families or the robust debates on substance that can strengthen our party. And that's a quote from McConnell himself. The question is, what are they going to do about it? Are they going to rip out, cancer? Either you're going to poison the entire organism in an attempt to just kill those cells, and really that's what's happening to them at the moment, or you're going to cut out, you're going to excise those members. And no one asked to kick her out of the House of Representatives. They couldn't even remove her from her committee assignments, Mike. And now we have her coming out with the apology after the fact, only because she's been caught. And now she's willing to admit that, yes, 9/11 absolutely happened and school shootings are real. And now she reverses course. And we do this often. We do this often when we see, especially in politics, especially with a lot of white people get themselves in trouble. We behave as if it's just an honest mistake that they made, forgetting the fact that this is a woman who's in her mid-40s. She's 46 years old, Mike. She said these things at the age of 44, just 2 to 3 years ago. Like, that's crazy. This is not a child. This is not a teenager wandering chat rooms, confused down a rabbit hole of things. This is a fully grown adult with a decade on both of us, who at the time, is believing in conspiracies such as Pizzagate. Like, these are the people who are seeping in and taking over the Republican Party, one of the major parties that run our country, or will play a part, whether in the minority or not, of running our country. And that is something that's a threat to all Americans, and not just the GOP itself, because we're not going to see the end of them. The GOP is not going to lay down and go away. They're not going to surrender seats in any legislature in this country. They're not going to surrender seats in Congress. As we see here, they won't even remove them from committees, let alone surrender a seat in Congress. And we have people who are so committed. U.S. Representative Matt Gaetz, who's a Republican from Florida's 1st Congressional District, he's willing to resign from his seat in the House of Representatives just to defend Donald Trump in a impeachment trial in the Senate. This level of commitment and this level of overzealous behavior. Everybody has a right to believe in their politics and believe in their political heroes. But this, you can very see, it's so overused, I hate to bring it up, but you can see how a character like Hitler was able to gain power in Germany. We're reliving it right before our very eyes. We had a failed coup attempt by Donald Trump and his supporters. They believe in egregious conspiracies, very much like the Germans believed in egregious conspiracies. That it's always the Jews doing this, the Jews doing that, Jewish space lasers now. And they are not being punished for their actions, words, or behavior. In fact, they're being promoted to new leadership positions. And you have people willing to sacrifice themselves for Donald Trump and not willing to admit that he's done anything wrong. I get it if you want to vote for him over Joe Biden. Okay, I get it if you want to vote for your politics. But we saw Republicans, whether it was like Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland, our former home state, whether we're talking about the senator from Utah, Mitt Romney, former Republican presidential candidate, by the way, like he was the last person to be the Republican candidate for president before Donald Trump, completely flying in the face of his own party now. It seemed you'd have thought he was the candidate from decades past. The party's changed so much. We see the Colin Powells of the world. We see the McCain family, and we know John McCain did not rock with him on his last breaths. He cursed Donald Trump to stay away from his own funeral. The Republican Party has changed so fast and handed themselves over to so extremists so fast, and you can see the scary parallels between what happened in a post-World War War in Germany, in which you had this charismatic figure that can say and do anything that people are willing to die for, and people are willing to just support their party and follow orders. And you have a large chunk of the populace not paying attention and brushing aside the most egregious behaviors, the most egregious conspiracies. If we do not nip this in the bud as a nation, not just for Republican parties. I think there's a lot of Democrats out there who laugh at it, Mike. I think it's, that's their problem and he'll destroy them from the inside. But that party's not going anywhere. If we don't deal with this as an entire nation, if we don't bring justice to those who died at the Capitol, people who will back the blue and Blue Lives Matter clean until they're standing in front of you to use their bodies as human shields to protect the Congress. Now they're the enemy. It's crazy. If we don't deal with this now, this will be the fracture that destroys this nation.
We've seen a faction of people willing to use paramilitary training and gear, willing to storm the nation's capital, willing to organize in militias, willing to conspire and plan out to try to kidnap a sitting governor. These sound like terrorists. And I think it would be a gross injustice for every American to not treat it as such, because that's essentially what's happening. They are radicalizing. They are further feeling themselves in these dark chat rooms on Parler, riling themselves up, coming up with ideas of how they're going to take this country back, through violence, through whatever means necessary that they believe. They're loading up on guns. They're loading up on ammo. They found pipe bombs during the insurrection. They found Molotov cocktails. They were there to do damage. They were there to make a point. And even as Marjorie Taylor Greene said, that it may be a civil war because freedom requires blood. And that's what I think some of these people are actually looking forward to. That's my fear, is that they are actually looking forward to civil war. They are looking forward to further violence. They are looking forward to releasing all this pent up anger. Another thing Marjorie Taylor Greene said, and this is what I really think drives a lot of it. She said that the white man is currently the most oppressed individual in this nation. The white man. White males are the most oppressed individuals in this nation. And that they all believe that. For some reason, they think they're all under attack, not because anything is being taken from them, but because liberties and freedoms are being given that they used to once exclusively enjoy are being given to others. And they don't think that's fair. They think that that's only reserved for them. They won't come out and say it, but that's what they feel. And like I said, they're gathering together in these little groups and these little clubs, and they're just stewing, coming up with ideas on how they can make this country great again in their eyes and their image. So for us as just regular average American citizens to ignore the fringe, I think is a mistake, because the fringe is quickly growing. You'll be surprised that, who is deep into QAnon, could be your neighbor, could be living right next door to you. You know, you can say hi to them every morning, and you know, when they go back in their house, they're getting their guns ready. They're logging on to these deep net, dark net chat rooms, plotting. You don't know. You don't know. So I think it's prudent that everybody takes this as a serious threat. I think it's actually a threat. I think it's a bigger threat than any external threat we face currently as a country. People like to always say China this, China that, and China is a growing superpower, and they are going to make a play for number one. But our greatest threat is at home. Our greatest threat is next door or in your family. These people need to be brought back to reality. You know, you need to challenge these people when they start espousing these thoughts and ideas that are not grounded in any kind of truth or fact. You can't let them continue to live in fiction, because all they're going to do is try to go and evangelize others. Like you said, I know it gets, like you said, it gets overused, but that's exactly how the Nazis convinced a country of people to murder millions because they're just Jewish, because they're different. I think we need to take this seriously. I think this could be a slippery slope. I think, you know, at this point, we've seen enough. I think at this point, the Republican Party should have seen enough. They need to move swiftly. This is a matter that they should be able to quell in-house, but they need to grow a spine to do it. And I don't think that spine is coming anytime soon. What my fear is that there'll be more terrorist attacks like we saw in the Capitol, but this time more localized and spread out throughout the country. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of lone wolf bombings and things of that nature, because they believe this conspiracy so bad that they're so out of touch that they actually need help. They actually need, you know, psychological help to get them back grounded. I remember seeing some people when they thought that when Biden got inaugurated, up until that very second, they were thinking that a coup was going to happen and the military was going to swoop in and they were going to kill and hang up Biden, hang up Obama, to hang up Hillary, and that the rightful government would be put back into place. They thought that. The people have screenshots from their chats. They thought that type of stuff. They're that delusional. It has to be addressed. It can't be ignored, and it needs to be taken seriously. You know, at this point, you know, the homegrown terrorist is the greatest threat I think that we have from at least a national security point of view. So, you know, this is something that, you know, as we move forward, we're going to keep an eye on. We're going to keep the monitor. You know, hopefully nothing else bad happens. There's people that lost their lives at the insurrection. We don't want to see any more loss of life, you know, because the person they wanted to win lost. You know, it's a lesson of learning how to lose that you know, a toddler can learn. But we need to, you know, be mindful of this going forward. So we're going to keep an eye on this. We're going to keep an eye on this political landscape. Things are going to get interesting. We see that stimulus checks are getting ready to get passed out, and a lot of movements being made. Biden signing a lot of executive orders. And while the Democrats control both the House and the Senate and the executive office, it's going to be interesting to see how many things actually get done. And we'll be sure to, you know, keep talking about it, keep coming out with these podcasts as news further develops. So make sure you like, listen, and subscribe. We really appreciate you listening to the podcast. We appreciate all the love and support. We're going to be recording a little bit more frequently, like Troy said. And as news develops, we will be sure to cover it. So in these trying times, we thought 2020 was a bad year. 2021 is not looking too much better at this point. But, you know, we're praying for better outcomes, cooler heads to prevail, and for this country to get some sanity again.